Welcome to the Notepad of History. If you enjoy content like this, subscribe. Now, let's look back into history for today. The Minutemen were farmers who became the first soldiers of the American Revolution. Before the Continental Army ever marched, before George Washington took command, before independence was even certain, there were the Minutemen, ordinary men, farmers, blacksmiths, carpenters, mill workers, men who lived quiet lives in small towns of colonial New England. But when the moment came, they were expected to fight at a moment's notice. And that is exactly how they earned the name. The Minutemen were part of the local colonial militias in places like Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. But they were not just any militia. They were a special group chosen by the townspeople. You can even think of them as the ready force of the colonies, or the National Guard at that time. While many men served in broader militia, Minutemen were expected to be younger, physically capable, and ready to mobilize instantly. Their communities trusted them to respond when danger appeared. In intense years leading up to the Revolutionary War, danger felt closer every day. In the 1770s, they were filled with growing anger towards British rule. Taxation without representation, trade restrictions, soldiers stationed in colonial cities. Many colonists believed their rights as English citizens were being ignored. Tensions grew year by year, and many towns quietly prepared for the possibility of war. Minutemen became the backbone of that preparation. Training of these men were not like modern military training. They didn't have full time barracks, no permanent officers. Most Minutemen trained only a few times a month, often on open fields, village greens, and pasture land. They practiced marching in formation, loading muskets, firing in volleys, and responding quickly to alarm bells. Their weapons were usually personal firearms, long muskets that they used for hunting. Some were older, some were worn. Each man offered oftentimes had their own ammo and powder that they had to supply. Uniforms were rare. Many Minutemen fought in their everyday clothing, simple wool coats, linen shirts, leather shoes, the clothes of working men. Life as a Minuteman required constant readiness. These men did not leave their farms or trades behind. After all, they still had families to look after. They continued planting crops, shoeing horses, repairing tools, and raising families. But they did keep their weapons close at hand, conceal and carry, if you will. A musket was above the fireplace, powder stored carefully, a bag packed and ready. If word came that the British soldiers were moving, they had a minute to gather up and march and get ready. And that moment finally came in April of 1775. British troops marched from Boston toward the town of Concord. Their mission was to seize colonial weapons stored there. But the countryside was already awake. Messengers rode through the night, warning towns along the way. Church bells rang, drums sounded. Men grabbed muskets and rushed to meeting points. The Minutemen were doing exactly what they had been trained to do: respond immediately. At the small town of Lexington, a group of Minutemen stood waiting as British soldiers approached. No one knows exactly who fired the first shot, but suddenly the quiet morning exploded into gunfire. Several colonists were killed. The British troops continued marching toward Concord, but by then the countryside was rising. Minutemen and militia gathered along the roads, fields, and forests. And when the British began their long march back to Boston, the fighting followed them the entire way. Colonists fired from stone walls, trees, and hillsides. The Minutemen had turned into an organized resistance. That day marked the beginning of the Revolutionary War. But the story of the Minutemen includes people often left out of early histories. Among the ranks were black patriots who stood alongside their neighbors. Some were free men, others were enslaved men who fought in hopes of gaining freedom. One of the most well known was Prince Estabrook, a black Minuteman who fought at the Battle of Lexington. He was wounded during the opening moments of the Revolutionary War, yet he survived and became one of the earliest recorded black soldiers of the conflict. Across New England, many black men joined the militia companies and Minutemen units. Their courage and contributions were real, even if history sometimes overlooked them. Life as a Minuteman was not easy. Most had very little military experience. They faced the most powerful army in the world at that time. The British Army was professional, highly trained, well supplied, and backed by the resources of the British Empire. Minutemen had none of that. They often lacked proper ammunition, food supplies was uncertain, medical care was limited, and many men had families depending on them. Each time they marched, they risked their families of potentially being left behind forever. Yet something made these men different. They were not fighting for a king, they were not fighting for conquest. They believed they were defending their homes, their towns, their rights. They fought beside neighbors they had known their entire lives, men who had worked together in fields and workshops. That sense of community gave them a powerful motivation. When the alarm bells rang, they answered, not as professional soldiers, but as citizens willing to stand and fight. In a time when the war grew far beyond the Minutemen, the Continental Army would form. Foreign allies would join the cause, and the conflict would stretch across 8 long years. The moment when the resistance first turned into war belonged to those local militia fighters, the Minutemen. Today, their legacy remains a symbol of ordinary people rising to defend their beliefs. They were not perfect soldiers. They were not professional warriors. They were farmers, craftsmen, laborers, men who answered the call when history demanded it. And in doing so, they helped shape the beginning of a new nation. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful day. Until next time, see you in the next video.